Welcome everyone to the game between Hikaru Nakamura and Andrey Esipenko. We see Hikaru coming into the game with his wife Atusa Purashan. She is a WGM. And Hikaru, well, he lost his first game to Fabiano Caruana. And there you see Andrey Esipenko also entering in with his wife and his second, David Paravian. Esipenko recently got married and actually did very well at the FIDE World Cup after his marriage. There you can see Hikaru and Fabiano waiting for the mandatory security check before entering in. And Esipenko takes his chair. He lost his first round to Javer Sindarov after playing really well. And now he takes on Hikaru Nakamura. Hikaru is definitely looking forward to his first point in the tournament. He had an unfortunate loss to Caruana in round 1. And Andrey Esipenko, well, for him, this tournament can go really well if he manages to start well, but it could also go really bad if he doesn't hit good form. Players are ready. You can always see Hikaru places his pawns really not in the center of the square. He places it right near his other pieces. Okay, anyway, the players are ready. Let's begin. Andrey Esipenko, for his first move, thinks for a bit and opens with the English opening pawn to c4. Let's see what Hikaru responds back with. He goes pawn to e6, which is exactly what he did with Caruana as well, if we remember, to pawn g3. So maybe Esipenko has improved upon that game of Caruana and Hikaru. Pawn to d5, Hikaru not shying away from a fight. Bishop g2. While Caruana had played knight f3 through a different move order, knight comes out to f6. And now knight to f3. So if Hikaru wants to repeat, he'll go pawn to d4, but I think it's too risky when your opponent has come prepared for it seeing the previous game. So c5 is what he has played. And one must point out that Hikaru has got two blacks back to back. Now cd, if you take with the e pawn, there would be d4 leading to the tarash, but knight takes d5 taken. And now white castles here. And black go bishop e7, a very calm way to play this position. But pawn to d4, you can see that Andrey is putting pressure on Hikaru. Now why is there pressure? Because after the knight takes d4 here, which is very likely to happen, the bishop on c8 is a bit messed up, cannot develop easily. And so Hikaru simply castles here with black. And now Andrey has to figure out what to do with this small edge. He has this incredible Catalan bishop. Queen b3, you can see the queen puts pressure here and the Catalan bishop is looking at this amazing diagonal. Now black goes knights to c6, and somehow Hikaru, in order to solve his problems, are ready to take up a weak isolated pawn on c6. Knight takes c6, b takes c6, and this pawn is definitely a small weakness here. E pawns to e4 attacking the queen. And now Hikaru comes back to f6. Usually, I've heard this, Anish speaking about this, the margin in a game is what he likes to say, that generally there's a margin of draw, and unless you do something really bad, that margin is not crossed easily. So here, Hikaru must be thinking that in spite of his position looking quite okay, he should not have crossed the margin. Queen Queen to b6. And now Esipenko, he goes to bishop e3. I like this move a lot because now after the queen takes b3, a b3, the rook opens up and the a7 pawn is weak. So the bishop comes to c5. And now Andrey takes the bishop, queen takes, and a very good idea is knight to c3. With the idea of knight a4. So for example, knight c3, rook b8, knight a4, let's say queen e7, and now queen c2. And this position is much better for white. But Andrey plays queen c3, a move that maybe not be the best. And Hikaru goes back, queen b6. He does not take here, which is correct, because take, white is better, same plan. But queen b6, he plays knight to d2, and now pawn to c5. Hikaru would love to get rid of this pawn for the b pawn. It's not so easy. And Andrey plays this very nice move, b3. Look at him calmly pushing his pawn. He now controls the c4 square. He's going to put the knight in there. Rook a, d8. And Hikaru is considered by many as one of the best defenders in the world. Maybe today is the day when he will have to show that impeccable defense. Bishop takes knight, he gives up the bishop, queen takes by Andrey. So it's bishop versus knight, the bishop on g2 isn't doing a great job, and e5 fixes the pawns here. But if the bishop can move in here, that could be nice. Rook a c1 attacking the pawn on c5, rook takes d1, rook takes d1, and pawn to a5 played, and rook comes to c1 here, putting pressure on c5. And black goes rook to c8. We have a queen to c3 played, trying to look at these two pawns. Queen goes back to c7. And now pawn to h4. Andrey maybe wants to pop out his bishop here. h6 played by Hikaru, taking away the back rack issues. And rook to c2. Black goes pawn to g6 here. And now queen e3 brings this queen into the position. And the queen comes back to d8. Rook comes to d2. These pawns are weak, but I think Hikaru has managed to generate enough counterplay. Bishop f1, the plan is to put the bishop here and then attack this pawn on h6, so he goes king g7. Now you must note that in this position, rook d2, queen b6, if he had gone and taken this, then c4 would have left the position getting liquidated. a4, rook c6 played, and now I'm just looking at c2, a very direct way to liquidate things by playing c4. Andrey takes, rook takes, and now you will win back this pawn on c4, but you will lose the pawn on e4. Takes, bishop takes, knight takes e4, quickly played by Hikaru. Rook e2 played to attack the pawn. Now a very decent move is f5 because if you play f3, knight takes g3 is hanging. He anyway plays because knight g3, rook e5 is winning for white. The knight is almost trapped, so that's the reason why he goes back, knight d6, and now rook takes pawn, knight takes bishop, pawn takes bishop, and rook to b4 attacking a4 and c4. Rook takes pawn, rook takes c4, and a check is given. King f6. This position could become very dangerous for Hikaru, especially now with 40 moves being reached and Andrey Esipenko having 31 minutes, but also if he deals with this well, he'll get his half point. Hikaru gets up, takes his much needed break, but Andrey comes in with his king. King to f2. Now this king defends the pawn. The dream scenario for white is to somehow move the king upwards without losing all his pawns. It's not so simple. Hikaru now goes check. King comes up and you have to give a check, another check. He finds it. It's a great move because king d4 or king d2 is met with rook takes pawn. So that's why king e2. And now another check. Very important, you don't have time to waste. a6, rook e8, white is moving ahead. And if white wants to make progress, has to go to king d3. And now the rook g2 is the best move here. Can Hikaru find it? If he cannot find this move, he's lost. Is the only move in the position. He finds it. Let's go. Beautiful move. And this move actually keeps things in balance. Not at all easy. Rook a6 check and the king goes back to f7. He moves up with his king, king to d4. Before things get out of hand, Hikaru must chop off a few pawns. He takes the first one, rook takes g3. Andrey goes even further, king e5, and it's time for Hikaru to take another pawn, rook takes f3. So black is now a pawn up, but white has managed to activate the king. Rook check, king goes to e8, a6 played, he pushes the pawn, and now the rook goes behind the pawn, rook a3, and maybe king e6. Yeah, threatening mate in one, and then you can try and pick up these pawns slowly. He goes king d8, avoiding the mate, and now the king f6 played, g6 is hanging, f5 is hanging, h6 is hanging, and so Hikaru comes back and a draw is agreed. Very interesting game, I must say. Andrey Esipenko putting a lot of pressure on Hikaru throughout the game, but in the end, Hikaru's defensive skills were just too good. He triumphed with the defense and got half a point as his reward. And well, hopefully Hikaru will try and push further in the front number 3 because the first 2 rounds have not been very special for him. And nice to see that Andrey Esipenko and Hikaru are analyzing together. And we will be back with more games from the FIDE Candidates 2026. I hope you're enjoying this coverage.